Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening. Welcome again to the August 21st, 2024 meeting of the Daytona Beach City Commission. We are happy and very delighted to have each of you with us tonight. Madam Clerk, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Strickland?
Here.
Commissioner May?
Here.
Commissioner Cantu?
Here.
Commissioner Henry?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Paris?
Here.
Mayor Derek L. Henry.
Here.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the July 17th, 2024 City Commission meeting.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Motion from Commissioner May, second from Commissioner Reed. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to our agenda item approval. If there are any changes, our city manager will address them.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, we're asking to add to item 8D, Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, the following donations from Commissioner Monica Paris: $10,000 for the Cochran Davis Center for repairs, $4,000 for Lucia Recovery Alliance towards the Freedom to Change program, and $10,000 to Food Brings Hope for the First Time Home Buyers program. Add item 8O, Finance Department distribution of Bike Week sponsorship funds, $600 to the Military Order of the Purple Heart by Commissioner Stacy Cantu. Add item 8P, City Attorney's Office Conditional Settlement Agreement between Dennis Scott, Chad Driggers, Douglas Willis, and George Rowland plaintiff in the City of Daytona Beach case number 622 CV2192 WWB-RMN. Add item 8Q, Fire Department Acceptance of a Grant Award, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Add item 9F, City Attorney's Office Emergency Ordinance Amendment, amending ordinance number 2024-241, which adopted the charter amendment subject to voter referendum.
Motion to approve the agenda with the said changes. Good gosh.
Yeah, a lot of them. Can we also add, could I add $500 of Bike Week fund to be given to the Purple Heart? Military Purple Heart? Yeah, I said I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are bike week.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion, we have a second. Do they need to amend their motion to include those items?
Ben,
Ben?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll amend my motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is our presentations. Item 6A is the Finance Department Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023. Presentation of the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us. I'm Yvonne Claiborne. I'm an audit partner with Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. I'm in charge of the audit for the city of Daytona Beach. With me today is Vincent Controne, who's the in charge for this audit engagement. We're presenting the annual audit of the year ended September 30, 2023. You have the booklets, and I'm going to give a very high-level Cliff Notes version. Okay. The large document that you have been presented is called an Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. As you're well aware, it has multiple sections. It has an introductory section, and then the financial section is broken out between the auditor's report, a management's discussion and analysis, financial statements and notes, required supplementary information, a statistical section, which is only required because the city submits this document for a Certificate of Excellence program with the Government Finance Officers Association. And then there's the compliance section, which is for your single audit and then for the reports that are required by the state of Florida. The auditor's report, which is on page 15, states that we perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards and uniform guidance, which is the single audit rules, and then Chapter 10, 550 rules of the Auditor General. That covers the single audit, but the state single audit portion of it, but it also covers some other requirements that the state puts on the auditors to perform while we're out there doing your financial statement audit. It's an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of audit assurance. It simply states that these financial statements are presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's not 100% guarantee, but what it says is that you've followed the accounting rules to a material extent. Again, there's an emphasis of matter paragraph again this year for implementation of a new accounting standard. This one was related to subscription-based information technology arrangements. Those are your cloud-based technology arrangements and other licensing agreements. That added a liability of $1.45 million to the financial statements as of the beginning of the fiscal year that was under audit. The highlights, we won't go over the fund financial statements. You see those throughout the year. So once a year, you get to see what's called the government-wide financial statements as part of this document. Those are your full accrual financial statements. Your utility funds are always presented to you on the full accrual basis, but your general fund is not. You budget your general fund under what's called the modified accrual basis, looking for current financial resources, because how you budget is saying how much money am I going to take in this year, how much money do I need to spend, and that's how you set your budget. When you get the full accrual statements on those general fund and those other governmental funds, it brings on all these liabilities that are not coming due anytime in the near future, but they're coming down the road. So those are like your pension liability, your other post-employment benefit liabilities, and the long-term debt. So again, not something you're going to use long-term financial resources for, but that full accrual statement will give you an idea of what really is out there in terms of what the government has to look forward to down the road. So under that full accrual accounting, you had an unrestricted net position in governmental activities. That's your general fund, your special revenue funds, and your internal service fund of a deficit of $56.4 million. And before you get that, again, is that long-term liabilities related to the pension, the other post-employment, because you're not taxing those today. But what that tells the users of the financial statements is some point down the road, those liabilities are going to come due, and the taxes at that point in time will pay for those liabilities. So it's an indication of what's going to come due in the future that the city will have to fund. The business type activities has a positive net unrestricted net position of $40.6 million. Restricted net position, and those are those dollars that you've taken in for a specific purpose. And again, you're not designed to accumulate those balances, because remember, if you collect it for a specific purpose, the idea is that you spend it out for that specific purpose. So those numbers will go up and down just based on activity. As of the end of the fiscal year, you had governmental activities had restricted net position of $70 million, and business type activities had restricted net position of $66.5 million. So again, and those will change from year to year. Again, on the statement of net position, we talk a lot about the pension liability. The net pension liability is, of course, one of the largest numbers on your statement of net position. This year, it increased from $127.5 million to $137 million. And again, that net position changes a lot based on how the investment is performing, because you have this money that you've set aside. So if the market's not performing well, that resources used to pay that liability, they go down, right? And so that liability is going to go up. And so it goes up and down, and then there's these things called deferred inflows and outflows, and those are those, it's trying to smooth that to the expenditure. So while the liability increased from 127 to 137 million, your deferred outflows decreased from 42.9 million to 37.6, and those deferred inflows decreased from 1.5 to 1.3. And again, that all hits the statement of activities at the same time and kind of smooths out how those expenses hit. So again, when we talked last, in previous years where the market was performing strong, that net pension liability was driving down. When the market picks back up, you'll expect to see that liability again go down unless you start hiring lots of new employees or you enrich the benefits. Citywide, your debt decreased by $152 million. It accounts for about 17.7% of your current year spending. There's a note 10 and the financial statements. It includes pledged revenues, and I encourage you to understand, read that note and ask questions if you don't understand them. And that, again, that's telling you, we've pledged a certain revenue stream for this debt service, and how much of that revenue stream is being used by that debt service. Okay. The report on internal control and compliance, we'll jump all the way back to page 205. That's, again, talking about the internal controls that we gain for understanding, for planning and performing the audit procedures. We're not going to give you an opinion on your internal control system. We're simply looking at it from the standpoint of how strong are those controls that we can rely on for performing our audit procedures. It did include a material weakness and a significant deficiency, but there were no instances of noncompliance with laws, regulations, contracts, or grants. With regards to the material weakness, it was related to revenue recognition. There were a couple of issues going into play that combined made it a material weakness. The entry for the unbilled receivables on utility billing wasn't made properly. That had to be adjusted before the audit could be, and it is adjusted in the audited numbers, but it did have an adjustment. And then the big one was the FEMA receivable. So as you well know, FEMA takes forever to pay. In the fund financial statements, the government auditing standards say you don't recognize that revenue if it's not collected in time for you to pay for those current financial resources. Remember, I talked about that current money that you can use, and that's how you budget. In this case, the receivable got recognized as revenue and hadn't been collected within the period of availability, and so it had to be adjusted for that. So at the end of the day, it doesn't change ultimately what's going to happen with the financial statements. It just says that until you actually collect within the period of availability, it sits out here in this account that looks a lot like deferred revenue. It's called something else. The capitalization of expenditures, the city has a lot of moving parts as it relates to buying capital assets. In this case, there was an issue with the capitalization policy not being applied consistently. And it was just one of those things that over the years, things had kind of, it got messy in terms of trying to apply the policies because there's so many moving parts. So the city is in the process now of looking at that policy and trying to make sure that we have a strong foothold for finance to say this is how it's going to be applied, so it's applied consistently, and it'll give you better financial reporting. On the single audit report, which is on 207, that is your federal single audit and your state single audit. If you expend a certain amount of money, that you're required to have the single audit. They call it a single audit because we do it at the same time as we do the financial statement audit. Again, same thing. We get an understanding of the internal controls just so that we can plan and perform the single audit procedures. The report did include some significant deficiencies, but there were no instances of noncompliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. And with regards to those significant deficiencies, as part of the CARES Act money or the ARPA money, there was an additional grant that was added that had a third party that was preparing the financial reports. There was no documentation that the city reviewed those reports before they got submitted to the grantor. Again, if there's no documentation, we can't audit, so it provides and a situation where you can't really say that we saw it. So again, we're just asking the city to make sure they document their review before it gets sent in. Suspension and debarment, this is not the first time we've kind of run into this with the city, and actually this is a very common finding with the federal single audits. It requires you to identify, before you start transacting business with vendors, making sure that they're eligible to do business with the federal government. And there's a website out there that says they're not suspended or debarred. And there's other ways to check that availability. But once you get them on board, you still have to follow up. In other words, you can't give a new contract, you can't give a change order or a new purchase order to a vendor that's under these covered transactions, so a grant-funded transaction, without making sure that they didn't, get in trouble, run afoul of the federal government. So again, it was a process that was in place with some of the grants, but this was a different grant. And so we've worked with your procurement team, and they've got a plan in place, and so we should see this one go away and hopefully not come back. The management letter on page 217, this is the report of the rules, the items that we're required to test as part of the Florida Auditor General. It does include your finding about the unexpended building permit balance. So if you want to read that one's in there. It also includes specific information that's now required for your Downtown Development Authority. Your CRA has their own financial statements, and so they provide that information in their financial statements. But because Downtown Development Authority doesn't have separate financial statements, the city has to put that information in their report. And that's in there. And then the last report that's in there is actually an examination report. Again, this is required by Florida statutes or the Florida Auditor General. It requires us to test that the city is investing their monies in compliance with the Florida statutes, and there were no instances of non-compliance noted. And with that, I've presented you my name and phone number. Again, anytime you have a question or have something you want to talk about, you're more than welcome to reach out to the audit team. At the end of the day, we work for the commission. We want to make sure that you have that opportunity to talk to us. We're happy to explain anything. If it's about the numbers in detail, I might direct you back to finance. But if it's about the audit process or anything we do or anything that's in our report, I'm more than happy to go over it with you. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Okay, with that, I would like to thank Finance for their participation in this process. It's a long process, I know, and they're happy to see us leave. And, but we're happy to work with them. They've been a pleasure to work with.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job, Finance. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is citizen comments. During this time, citizens have the opportunity to address the City Commission on any item on the consent agenda. Our first speaker is Gary Lehechka, and on deck is Karen DeLiz.
A temporary resident of the First Step Shelter, and I know the First Step Shelter has gotten a lot of bad press recently. I guess in June, before I was there, some employees, nurse, an operations manager, and I guess a case manager disagreed with some of the shelter's rules, and there was whatever, and they left. So, but the shelter provides valuable services to the city of Daytona and other residents of Volusia County. It's an emergency storm shelter during hurricanes. They host meetings for Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and Volusia Recovery Alliance and other groups that are both beneficial to shelter residents, as well as if you're a member of one of those organizations, you're welcome to attend a meeting. They're not only a shelter for residents, they provide food, clothing, transportation, either the shelter has a shuttle bus that they take people to make appointments for jobs or housing. Where their shelter's right on the 60 bus route, and on the weekends on Sunday, it's on the 10 bus route. Or the shelter also has bicycles that to some residents they loan out. People are there for whatever reason. You know, myself, I'm in the middle of a dissolution and found myself across the street, homeless and sandals, shorts, and a t-shirt about a month, end of June, beginning of July. Different things happen to people in life, and you find yourself in an unpredictable circumstance. Anyhow, I know the shelter's been getting bad press, but it provides good things, and it has a lot of rules, and not everybody agrees with the rules, but the rules are there to provide stability, to cut down on liability, to give structure to people that need structure. And unfortunately, the press doesn't investigate. They just seize on something that looks like a chum in the water, and there's sharks circling around. So just want to comment that the shelter's doing good things, and I think you should renew the lease. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen DeLise, and on deck is Sandra Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Karen Delisle, and I live in Ormond Beach. And I just lost my talk. Give me 1 second, I apologize. Thank God. Okay. I live in Ormond Beach, and I am a member of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church and also a member of Faith. On behalf of Faith and Faith's Affordable Housing Committee, I want to thank you, Mayor Henry, and the City Commission and staff for sticking your necks out there and starting First Step Shelter and supporting it. Your amazing city really has led the way in the county. Since opening in December 2019, First Step has housed 698 people in permanent housing. And of those 698 people, 94% of them are still in housing 2 years later. It really has gone a long way to help our community, and we hope to see your continued support in the years to come. We also want to thank you for the work you've done for affordable housing. We know that we could get many more people off the streets if we had housing for them. Thank you again, and I mean it sincerely, for your leadership. You guys are rock stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lau.
Our next speaker is Sandra Murphy, and on deck is Ann Ruby.
Good evening, Sandra Murphy, 136 Park Avenue. I wanted to talk tonight about item 8G, the tax incentives for Arrow, which is a real tongue twister. And I recognize that right now this is early days, that we don't even know if this is an entity that's coming to us, but I'm asking you to think a little bit further ahead. I think the economic incentives are a terrific idea. This is the kind of professional work that we're hoping to bring more of into the city, into the county, and so I support that. But the devil is sometimes in the details. And we have talked before about how the language is important. So I'm asking you to instruct your attorney to be specific when these contracts are negotiated in the number and types of jobs that are being subsidized, so you know that your dollars are well spent. It's important that they be full-time jobs. It's important that we look at the median wage instead of just the average wage. And just as a quick illustration of that, if you have one person making $200,000 and two people making $20,000, your average wage is $80,000. The average sounds pretty good, but you have two people who are working for poverty level wages. And what we don't need any more of is jobs that bring people who then can't afford to live in the housing that we have available. And so I'm asking that you give that instruction, that you be very specific about looking at the true value of those jobs and make sure that the economic incentive is being given out for what it is we want to receive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ann Ruby, and on deck is Frederick Brown.
Hi, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. On 8E, I would urge passing of the lease tonight. What's going on with the lease for the shelter is completely separate from what's going on with the whistleblower's complaint, and we do need the shelter to continue going forward, no matter what happens with the other stuff. So I would hope that you would pass that. I also want to talk about 8G. Because when we give these incentive packages, too often they're reported back to us as FTEs, full-time equivalents. So they're saying their average wage full-time is going to be $74,000, which is great. At $74,000, you can pay $1,850 a month rent. But if they have two employees working 20 hours a week to make one FTE, all of a sudden you have employees who can only pay $925 a month. If you have employees who are going through a temp agency, the temp agency wage would be, it's the wage at $74,000 would be $37 an hour. But if they're going through a temp agency and they're making $20 an hour, again, the person taking home their paycheck is not going to be able to afford an apartment or a place to live. So it is really important that if they decide not to get the Space Florida financing, or they're ineligible, or whatever happens, and we're negotiating how we're going to look at this, it's please pay attention to that. Because you cannot just take FTEs. You have got, and that's how they're going to want to report it. It is how they're going to want it. It's the most convenient for them. But you need to ask for the things like, what is the median, like Sandy said, the median salary. How many actual employees are there? If I report 10 FTEs, but I've got 25 people working, nobody's taking home a real living wage. So please make sure that that's specific in there and set that expectation early. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Frederick Brown, and on deck is John Nicholson.
Frederick Brown, 1508 Crystal Ridge, Daytona Beach. I would be remiss if I didn't remind the commission, the city manager, and the rest of the staff on item 8A is $40,000 basically poured down the drain. Oil changes, not needed in electrical vehicles. Again, if the city would begin their transition to that, we can see that number, instead of going up, going down. And it's going to continue to go up with the temperature I'm seeing from our federal government. 8H is a great idea. I have my doubts whether or not the city will actually support it. I also have concerns if any of you actually read the entire contract. I say that because there are errors in the document as posted online, and sections 11 and 12 is unreadable, pages 5 and 6, because of formatting errors. So that tells me, I don't know if anybody's actually even read this thing. Again, time will tell whether or not the city actually supports this, but again, clean energy is a great idea, and what I've seen so far, the overwhelming majority of the CPACE money has been spent on hurricane issues, not clean energy. Unfortunately, that's one of the clauses, well, it's one of the things you can use it for. But I would like to see the city to take more of a clean energy approach. I've stated that many, many, many times. Again, the paybacks will fund it. Item 8I, boy, do we need lighting here. I still have time. Let me look it up. This is an FPL money grab. I've worked with FPL before in replacing lighting systems. And again, I've heard the clause, devil's in the details. It really is. You're going to be putting in 164 fixtures. We'll be removing 29. The city's paying most of the costs here. And then on top of that, we're paying $270 rental for these fixtures. This amounts to $44,280. And then on top of that, the little clauses in there that I don't know if the commission has actually read these things, they have the right to keep jacking it, and they will. Now, in the past, I've dealt with Florida Power and Light and some of the other utility companies, and I can tell you that on these projects, the lights are completely paid for within 10 years. Meaning all the monies after that is nothing but clear profit. But because we're funding a lot of the upfront money on all this, they're making a killing on this deal. Again, I really wish the commission would actually look at the details and staff before they put these things before the commission. Thank you.
Our final speaker on the consent agenda is John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue, going over some of the exact same things that were mentioned. One, with regard to the oil. 20 years ago, the fire department used to do work on their own engines. And to a point, they farmed out, or they took in work from other cities and made a profit. I think it was $34,000 or $43,000 a year. When you think of all of the vehicles that we have, police, fire, leisure services, permits and licensing, code, we have several hundred automobiles. Would it be more profitable for us to do it in-house? Secondly, the lease on the marina, I'm not quite sure we want to do that. What does it do to that building? What was the idea originally when we did the marina and had that building there? There were restaurants, there were places for marina. Now we've done it, city employees, now it's going to be a school. What's it going to attract? Because right now, when I walk by on Sunday, there are a couple of homeless people sleeping in the back. One of the homeless got angry with somebody that's living in the building, so now somebody's living in the building. And what is it going to turn out to be ultimately? Because we want to do something with marina. It used to be one of the finest marinas on the East Coast. It no longer is. We need to bring it back. Third, incentives, absolutely. Air, if we get that, that airport will boom. Our kind of industrialization in the city of Daytona Beach will change drastically. All right, we will then be in a position to really benefit off of the Cape. So I'm asking us to really, whatever incentives are required to bring them here, do so. First step shelter, 700 people permanently off the street. That's a huge number. A small argument between a couple of employees is nothing to stop this shelter that we waited 20 years to get going anyway. So I'm asking you to, whatever your opinion of it, this is functioning, it works. It will be terrible if we were to close it or to take it on ourselves and have to pay it out of pocket. So I'm asking you to not even think twice about taking it over and paying it out of pocket. Thank you.
And that was my final speaker for the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I did want to say that we added an item 8Q, Fire Department Acceptance of a Grant Award. I just want to let you all know if you hadn't received the information, the Fire Department Administration in my office in the grant, our grant writer, were able to secure a $10,092,500 grant for our new fire station relocation from the Office of Resiliency and Coastal. Beth Lemke and Drew Driscoll and the team at the fire department put in for this grant. So this will really be something that we'll be able to use for our new fire station that's going to be built off of Ridgewood. And so I just want to applaud the staff, Drew and his team, and the grant writer for getting that grant from the Florida Office of Resiliency and Coastal Protection. That's one of the items we added to the agenda tonight. And Mr. Strickland did want to say something in reference to a couple items on the consent agenda.
Yes, I would like to take 8E and 8P off so we could have a little discussion for the sake of transparency for our residents.
Okay, that's fine.
Mayor, I would like to actually give the opportunity if Cyrus would like to come up and speak regarding 8G.
Yes.
On which one?
Mr. Strickland, which two did you want to?
8G.
E and P.
E and P are the ones you want to move from consent?
Yes.
And Mr. Cyrus, the airport economic development.
Well, good evening, Your Honorable Mayor Henry, City Commission of Daytona Beach. It's a pleasure to stand before you today. We have a great opportunity with Aura Era coming to our community. I will be taking a similar action to our county council to approve, hopefully, our incentive program. We're still in the competitive process. So this is just the first step with us presenting a plan for this aircraft manufacturer that's on the cutting edge right now to come in our community. So right now they are involved in discussions with a number of airlines that are looking at their prototype, and then also trainers as well. The location of Embry-Riddle is very important as to why they are looking at our location. However, it is a very competitive recruitment. So I'm just here in solidarity, support, to let you know that we will be going through this together as one community, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak about that item.
And Jeff Brown, our Economic Development Director, is a partner with Cyrus on this particular project to work on incentives with the county and the city and the state of Florida. They've been in meetings with different individuals throughout the state. So I see Jeff over there, so I wanted to say that.
And Cyrus, for the record, would you tell, so the community knows who you are?
Yes, I'm Cyrus Callum, and I apologize for that. Cyrus Callum, I'm the Director of Aviation and Economic Resources for Volusia County.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
They've removed those items.
Well, we're with removing those two items.
Yeah. What were they?
8E and 8P.
E and P, okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second?
No, I need a motion.
What we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Do you want me to go and take them now? Okay. So we're going to move to item 8E. With the City Manager's Office First Step Shelter, Inc. Lease Renewal Agreement Resolution. A resolution approving the lease renewal agreement with First Step Shelter, Inc. for the operation and maintenance of the First Step Shelter facility for a 5-year term commencing October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2029, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the renewal agreement and providing an effective date.
We have a motion, we have a second.
And
Commission? So, Commissioner Strickland?
Yes, you know, we're in a position where we're gonna have to, if we want that shelter to survive, we have to go ahead and approve this lease. And we have to keep, what else is going on at that shelter separate from this, no matter what the turnout is of what's in question there right now. And I just wanted to make that clear to some residents who had contacted me and said that we shouldn't approve a lease with the controversy going on there. No matter how this controversy ends, we need to keep that lease there, keep that shelter there, because it has done a whole lot of good as far as getting people off the street here in Daytona, and we need to make sure that we don't do anything to hamper that going forward in the future.
I couldn't, of course, agree more. Anyone else? Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I understand apprehension on the parts of some folks. This has transpired not at the most ideal time to have issues, and I've never been dismissive of the issues. It's certainly my intention that, you know, as a board president, is it, or chair president? Forget which one it is, chair or president, but it's president. To dismiss it, it just came at a bad time when you're in the middle of trying to negotiate and make sure that you sustain the level of support that you've had. We've been very proud of the work that's been done at the shelter. The numbers speak for themselves, and they are well received nationally. Anywhere you go and you talk about this type of work and these type of numbers, other people, even in our community, they just are blown away by what we've been able to accomplish in that way. So you have to take the numbers for what they are, but you also have to say that if we find that things are untenable and changes have to be made, I'm going to be the first person to support that. And that means leadership or whatever it takes, because I believe that the leadership is not more important than the perpetuity of the shelter. And I've said that publicly, but if the leadership is survivable, that'll be up to the board, but I'm not going to be supporting anything that is not good for the perpetuity of the shelter. And you can be assured of that as both the mayor and the chair of the shelter. Which, you know, by all means, we didn't want a shelter. The city didn't want to have to be in the shelter business. And heaven knows I didn't want to be a mayor who had to be the chairman of a board that was a shelter. When I signed up for this job 12 years ago, that wasn't a part of it. But you do what is necessary for the city. And that's really what the work has been. And it's frankly become a labor of love and compassion, because you see that it's making a difference. But I assure you all that the shelter will not be less than it should be in terms of its management. So, do we have any other questions or comments? Okay. We have a motion. We need to vote on this individually? Or, okay. Do we have a motion?
yeah, we have a motion and a second.
All right. No further comments or questions? All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
We're going to move on to item 8P, the City Attorney's Office Conditional Settlement Agreement between Dennis Scott, Chad Driggers, Douglas Willis, and George Rowland. This is a resolution approving a conditional settlement agreement with the plaintiffs in Scott et al. Versus the City of Daytona Beach, number 622-CV-2192-WWB-RMN, stipulating to damages in a total amount of $80,000 payable if the city loses on appeal, subject to conditions, and providing an effective date.
We have a motion, Commissioner May, second, Commissioner Reed. Okay, do we have any questions or comments?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Could we get the city attorney to explain to the public what you explained to us in our agenda briefings, what this really means?
Sure, and this is what I did mention to those of you with whom I had individual pre-meeting briefings. As you know, the federal district court case, the federal district court judge in the panhandling case has issued a partial final summary judgment order, which permanently enjoins the city from enforcing Section 66(1) of the code, which is the ordinance on panhandling, begging, and solicitation that Mr. Conn drafted for the city. The city has the right to appeal it, but unless and until the city does and wins on appeal, we literally cannot enforce that ordinance. And there's no need to go to a trial on whether it's legal or not. That was the judge's order. There will be no trial on that. One of the issues that would remain at trial is the damages for the 4 named plaintiffs. And the plaintiff's demand for damages was $150,000 between the 4 of them. Mr. Conn, who's also the city's outside counsel representing the city in the lawsuit, tentatively negotiated with the plaintiff's attorney proposed conditional settlement agreement, which is what we have in front of us, where first we would agree to stipulated damages of $80,000 for the 4 plaintiffs instead of the $150,000 they demanded, and second, that would not be payable unless 1, we failed to file an appeal, or 2, if we file an appeal and lose that appeal. So we are pursuing an appeal. If Mr. Conn wins that appeal, of course, we wouldn't have to pay any damages. One other thing that this a conditional settlement does, in addition to saving potentially the money between what they claimed and what's on the table, it allows us to avoid the litigation cost of having Mr. Conn litigate the issue of damages. And if we were to lose the case, it avoids the cost of paying the plaintiff's attorneys to litigate the damages as well. So this is a potential cost savings for the city. The city doesn't have to pay anything unless and until the appeal comes and goes, and if we lose, that's when we'd pay. Otherwise, we don't really have to pay anything under this agreement.
If we lose, we've got to pay $80,000 to the plaintiffs.
Yes.
And we'll also have to pay their attorney's fees. Do we have a rough estimate as to how much those attorney's fees might be if we were to lose?
I don't have that. That would be another issue that would be litigated at trial. As you may know, our cost as billed from Mr. Conn to date, our own attorney in this matter, have between him and the expert witnesses he retained, that's exceeded the deductible that the city has in its excess liability policy. So we have an excess liability policy that would kick in if the total cost to the city in this case exceeds that deductible. That deductible is $350,000, and I believe Mr. Conn has billed to date somewhere in the range of 400 plus thousand. So you might think of that as a rough approximator of what the plaintiff's attorney's fees might be if we lose.
But we have insurance to cover that. That's not going to be taxpayer paid.
That's right. We have the insurance policy for this reason.
That's all I have.
All right, do we have any other questions, comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
We have a motion and a second.
All right, all those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 9, which is public hearing and quasi-judicial hearings. Item 9A is the Growth Management and Planning Department, First Amendment to the Aspari LPGA PD rezoning. This is an ordinance on second reading, public hearing. An ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Aspari LPGA Plan District Agreement to allow for additional permitted uses and clarify development criteria within the plan district, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the First Amendment and providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Commissioner Henry. Who was the second?
Me.
Commissioner Cantu. Okay. Have a motion and a second.
I do have Jessica Gal here on behalf of the applicant.
Good evening, Jessica Gal. For the record, Copco Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard in Daytona Beach, Florida. I just want to clarify for the record that based on the discussion we had at first reading, the PD agreement has been revised to limit hotel uses to 90 hotel rooms. So you guys should have that revised agreement in your packet, and we're here for any questions. Thank you.
All right, good, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be, yes, ma'am.
So that will be put in.
It will be put in the PD agreement.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. This motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to item 9B is the Growth Management and Planning Department, Second Amendment to the Caris Cold Storage PD rezoning. This is an ordinance on second reading, quasi-judicial hearing. An ordinance approving the Second Amendment to the Caris Plan District Agreement to clarify landscaping requirements within the Plan District, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the First Amendment and providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Commissioner Cantu and a second from Commissioner May.
And I do have Jessica Gal here on behalf of the applicant for any questions.
No questions from Ms. Kyle? Okay. All right, motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to item 9C is the Growth Management and Planning Department Proportionate Fair Share Process, LDC Text Amendment. This is an ordinance on second reading, public hearing. An ordinance amending Article 2 and Article 3 of the Land Development Code to modify the approval process for proportionate share agreements and to clarify city staff authority to review and approve specific contracts and instruments identified in the code, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner May and a second from Commissioner Cantu.
I have no speakers on this item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, if there are no questions from the commission, all those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. This motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Moving on to item 9D, it's the Growth Management and Planning Department Signage in Public Parks, LDC Text Amendment. This is an ordinance on second reading, public hearing. An ordinance amending Article 6 of the Land Development Code to exempt non-commercial informational signage installed by the city in city parks or on city properties or buildings, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Commissioner May and a second from Commissioner Reed.
And I do have one speaker, Mr. Mayor, Mr. John Nicholson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Nicholson, we knew that. Indeed.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. What I'm concerned about is reading the backup. There's a possibility of charities, nonprofits. I've seen them put signage on our property. I'm wondering if this opens the door. Is this just for us saying, okay, here is this, here is that, this is where you get to City Hall, or this is the county building or whatever? Is it just in-house signage? I don't have a problem with it. If it is county property, federal property, NPO, whatever, then I think we have to take a double look at it. Thank you.
That was my only speaker, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have a motion and a second. No other questions. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to item 9E, it's the Growth Management Planning Department, Daytona Beach Fire Headquarters Public Use Permit. This is a resolution public hearing. A resolution approving a public use permit to authorize the development of a fire department headquarters building on a 2.86 plus or minus acre parcel generally located on the west side of the South 400 block of Ridgewood Avenue, an off-site compensating storage site on a 1.32 plus or minus acre parcel located at 505 Live Oak Avenue, and associated improvements on both parcels, and providing an effective date.
We have a motion and a second.
I have no speakers on this item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, no questions or comments. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 9F. This is City Attorney's Office Emergency Ordinance amending ordinance number 2024-241, which adopted the charter amendment subject to voter referendum. This is an ordinance public hearing. And an emergency ordinance amending the city ordinance number 2024-291, which adopted the City of Daytona Beach charter amendment subject to voter referendum approval during the November 5th, 2024 general election, revising the ballot summaries for consistency and compliance with the state statutory requirements, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
That might be the slowest motion in history. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Strickland and Reed in that order.
Yes.
I
I have no speakers.
No speakers. This motion, those who favor this motion, let it be noted by saying aye. Aye. Those who are opposed, same sign. Yeah, motion carries 7-0. No idea.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 10, which is introduction of ordinances. Item 10A is the Growth Management Planning Department Affordable Housing Fee Changes. This is an LDC text amendment. This is an introduction of an ordinance on first reading. An ordinance amending Section 6.22 of the Land Development Code relating to affordable housing to include administrative authority to reimburse development and impact fees for affordable housing projects that do not qualify for fee waivers, establishing procedures and standards, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date. And are there any questions or comments from the commission on this item? Okay, hearing none, the public hearing and final action is set for September 4th. Moving on to number 11, which is our administrative items. 11A is the Economic and Strategic Opportunities Amendment to Biketoberfest 2024 Master Plan for Private Property. This is a resolution amending the Biketoberfest 2024 Master Plan for Private Property to allow relocation of approved outside activities located at 408 Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard to 560 Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard and providing an effective date.
We have a motion and a second. Yes,
I
ma'am.
do have a speaker. And I don't know if Ms. Askew wanted to. Okay. Come on up. Tawana James Dozier? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, and the commissioners from each respective zone. My name is Tijuana James Dozier, and I'm the owner of 560 Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard, a property that was formerly owned by a very dear friend and mentor, Ms. Patricia Hurd. I'm coming before the commission to request that my previous application for the upcoming Biketoberfest be moved. And I'm getting a little emotional because I'm sure everybody understands why. But I want to request that my previous application be moved to this property. I feel that it would be a great move in that this is a piece of property that is a part of the history of 2nd Avenue. I feel very honored and blessed to have been afforded the opportunity to buy it. Many years ago, I vended for from Ms. Hurd. And, you know, in my younger years, she put a lot of knowledge in me. She helped develop me. She helped grow me. We talked on several occasions. And it's through her guidance and leadership that I learned a lot about Bike Week and Biketoberfest. I really enjoyed participating in those activities. I have my dear friend Claire. She works in my store that we opened earlier this month, so she can attest to the reason why we're here, because we want to continue that legacy of Black Bike Week and Biketoberfest. It's important not only for me as an African American businesswoman, but several vendors come from across the country every single year to support this activity, and a lot of revenue is brought to Daytona Beach as a result. In my store, I also have students that attend Bethune-Cookman University. They have the opportunity to not only earn money, but Claire and myself, we provide mentorship to them and help develop them as young men and women, and also encourage them to be entrepreneurs themselves. So with that, I would like Claire to say a few words in support of this, because she is really a part of this. I often tell them, this is just not my store, this is our store, something that we want to build on and make a part of this community forever.
I was really thrilled about a month ago when my friend Tia called me and told me she had purchased the property, and I knew it was our former alumni friend, good old Pat Hurd. And I became very emotional too, because she had told me her vision years ago, and then this opportunity opened up. So we've had a soft opening for the past 2 to 3 weeks. Alumni near and far have come and bought paraphernalia, getting ready for our first home game, September 7th. The community at large are coming in and supporting us. They're glad to have a store instead of just acquiring merchandise from her during the vending time, you know, at the game, bike week, etc. Even some of the bikers have been in.
Thank you for your consideration.
Get to speak for the rest of the commission, but I think I speak for all of Daytona Beach when I say that if the spirit of Pat Hurd is going to live on with Bike Week, let it roll on. I do not want to be the one who blocks that spirit. And I am thrilled that you are taking up this mantra, and I don't say no to my teachers either. So I'll just leave it at that. Taught me, I kind of usually line up with my teachers. It's good karma when you line up with your teachers. Claire was my teacher a long time ago, right?
And it is supported by staff that this is a great opportunity to make sure it's in that location.
Yeah, that's great. Any comments? No?
I made the motion.
Yeah, you made the motion, got the motion, got the second?
Yep.
I'm with you on this. It's got to do with Miss Hurd, we got to keep it going.
Yeah. All right, all those, you want, Steve, you coming on this item?
Come on up.
Come on up.
Don't sit down.
Vote, yeah.
Yeah, because they ready to vote.
Steve Miller, 383 Walnut Street, Daytona Beach, Florida. I rise tonight, Mayor, for 11A for approval. We're thrilled to have a new business partner on Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard. In fact, I visited the store, and they seem like they're doing very well. The students are patronizing her goods, and we're just happy to have her on the avenue. Thank you for your consideration.
Absolutely. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Good luck. Let it roll.
Okay, that was our last agenda item.
Oh, that's our last agenda item. Okay, so we're moving on to commission comments tonight. We'll commence with Commissioner Strickland. Yeah.
I'm not going to say too much about my second thing. The first one, the groundbreaking at the Jack, I think was excellent. Had a great turnout, and I think that project is something that we needed to do to keep baseball here, to keep Jackie Robinson's legacy alive, and bring a museum and stuff. It was a great event. Very briefly, excellent event last night at the Museum of Arts and Sciences to celebrate 100 years of the Highlands, which is in Paula Reed's zone, and I'll stop right there. Y'all have a good night.
All right, brother.
Last week I attended also the event of Jack Robinson Ballpark, and pleasant event. Good to see everybody there. I just remember being on commission when we changed the name to Jackie Robinson Parkway, and it was sort of a foretelling years ago of what else are we going to do on that particular piece of land. So it's good namesake there. I attended the Highland event, really good event by Commissioner Reed and the community there. I learned really good information about the history. I look forward to seeing some of that on the QR codes we're planning for some of our historic sites in town. So I want to say one more time that that $50,000 grant, it's very interesting, but keep in mind that you have to have 20% yourself. So whatever you get from the city, you can hold it for 2 years. You don't have to repay it, but you have to put up 20%. The city will put up 80%. So that's a very important piece. The other piece that I was questioning was access. Some people are not computer savvy, and what they were telling me was that you don't need to be computer savvy to access the grant. So let's say the ladies who were here, they could potentially apply for it. You can use it in a number of ways. It's not just outside facade, it's also interior, and it also includes, I'm hoping, I think I heard today, some kitchen. So if you're doing a restaurant, you could actually use the funds to actually create a kitchen structure in your unit, right? And then they also have programs for rentals if it's a subsidy lease. So we're being very creative with how we can use it access-wise. You don't need a computer. You could actually contact them and they will hold your hand. The phrase was hold your hand and help you fill out the paperwork. They will guide you in how to do it. So you don't need to be worried about that. So that was very important. Also today we were at the Housing Advisory Board. I was in meeting today at the advisory board. So we do have affordable units coming up. I would like to know if we could possibly get a presentation from the county on their program called 386. I would like to know an update. Maybe they can give us an update of the status of 386, what 386 is, whether it's been implemented, how it's impacting residents who were impacted by flooding. I've heard that some people are still living in trailers. They're also paying rent on the trailers or leasing it, and they're still paying their mortgages. And my question is just for the county program 386, how is this working out for us? I'd like to know how the residents are doing with it. But if they could do a presentation so all of us have an update, that would be just fantastic, right? With regard to affordable housing, the Valencia Square project, it's coming along very nicely. So we're in the same builder who is building the 400 South Beach Street. Commissioner Reed at the time was commissioning Zone 6. Now it's part of the new Zone 3, so they will be moving forward more aggressively in 2025. So both of those will be taking off 400 South as well as Orange Avenue project tangentially. So I think that's very exciting. We'll see some really nice things, all right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I have nothing. Have a great night.
All righty. Commissioner Henry?
Just two things, and that is that we hosted our drive-in movie theater, Commissioner Cantu and myself, and it was a hit. I mean, it was a hit. We had hundreds and hundreds of people to show up for our first movie night. So we're looking to, I would like to see it implemented more often and it be something that the city take on that we can do over in that particular area. We have the music festival. Commissioner Reed has music over in her zone, and we have music over in the beach side. So we figured that this could be something really great that could happen in our community every now and again. We could do some more drive-in movie nights. It really brought the community together, the community on that side over there, that they don't have very many activities. It brought them together. They were ecstatic. We had some hiccups. I was not pleased with the company that we chose, and I've asked staff to look at purchasing our own movie theater blow-up equipment. And I'm willing to sponsor that, and anybody, of course, any commissioner can use it, but I'm looking to sponsor that, and that way we have our own things, because we didn't get started until 9 o'clock, and it was, he wanted to charge us an extra $600 if he put his equipment up, and it rained, as opposed to just canceling it. But he kept the money, and then we would pay $200 for him to do it the next week. He was thoroughly aggravated with us, and then I just made a executive decision, and I told him, okay, if it rains out, I'm just going to pay the $600. And so It didn't rain, of course, because we had called Chief Driscoll, and he said that he had been checking the weather, everything was, and I think that company just wanted some extra money. And I kept telling, Commissioner Cantu, I said, he just wants some extra money. He wants to come back next week and get that extra money. I said, we're not giving him extra money. And so suffice it to say, if we have our own screen, then we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Staff can, it's not much for them to put it up.
The movie rights, we didn't get the license.
And then we would just have to pay for the movie rights and license anytime we put a movie up. And I think,
We wouldn't have to if you look into buying the movie rights, the license for that, and then we'll automatically have it.
oh, okay. I know you can do it per movie as well. So, and I think that would be something great, and then we could use it for all of the zones.
And we're looking for, since this is going to be a city sponsor, we're looking to have one on the west side during Christmas.
Yes.
Or Christmas movie.
Yes, a Christmas
With
movie.
Santa.
Yes. And so that was a big hit. And the next thing is I attended a literacy program for Early Learning Coalition. And they gave away lots of really nice, expensive learning toys for children in the community. They had different resources for parents. And it was a grand old time. And it was put on by Early Learning Coalition and Dr. Anissa, a chiropractor here. Football is underway at our city facilities, and so it's great to see the kids back out, back active, and families back active in Zone 5. I love it. I love to see it. And those are my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Can I have some of Commissioner Cantu's time?
Oh, God.
Well, first of all, I'll just piggyback on what Commissioner Henry just said in regards to the schools, the kids coming back and school being open and the hustle and the bustle of big feet, little feet, because the big ones are coming back too. And I had an opportunity to welcome the students back to Palm Terrace. That elementary is now my school. Commissioner May now has Turity, where I normally am. But I said, out of respect for the new commissioner, I got to go to the school that I now represent. And I enjoyed it. I had a little cheer going on and everything. The manager and I were there. And it was just a good time to welcome those young people back. I wanted to, so let me check that off. Commissioner May, I did support your Sunsplash activity for the kids. Unfortunately, it was like teacher day, so they came back later. Yeah, so maybe next year we'll look at that schedule because it was really nice. And that's the area that I grew up in. I almost drowned in that pool. But, and by the time my parents went to teach me how to swim, I'd already almost drowned like twice. Water is not my friend other than taking a shower. But it was really nice to see something happen at that location and the work that we've done to that location to bring that pool at Campbell Street back to fruition. Commissioner Cantu, you're our representative on the TPO, correct?
Correct.
So the crosswalk that they're doing for Bethune-Cookman, it's going to be on, what is that street, Lockhart? Lockhart? Do you know where it's going to be?
I'm not sure.
Well, would you check into that, please?
Yeah.
Because those students don't walk all the way down to that tobacco store and that Mercedes-Benz place. We wanted it on Lincoln. They're not going to do a bridge over International. They're going to do a walking cross, from what I understand, similar to what they have at Mainland. So the lights are going to stop. But do you understand where I'm saying, where they're putting it? By the Mercedes and the tobacco shop. That restaurant that has the big arch with the great hamburgers? It's on the other side of that. That's beyond the school. Who's crossing the street down there? It needs to be on Lincoln. Would you check into that for me, please? Okay, thank you so much. Somebody brought that to my attention. Back to school drive sponsored by the chief and several others that were engaged in that. It was great. They separated the students from middle school and senior high and elementary and just a plethora. Learned that word in grad school, y'all. A plethora of engagement from myself, Gary Yeomans Ford, Turnaround Foundation, just learned about the No Longer Fatherless, and they were there. Thomas Ferguson National Fade League, a barber shop. The kids were getting barbered. They were getting little haircuts, getting ready for school. It was really nice. It was at Daisy Stocking Park, and it was well organized. For example, the stages where they got their backpacks, whether you're in elementary and middle school or high school. And then they used the park and the pavilions that we've added for the stuffing. So you got your pack and then you went around. So it wasn't congested. There was a line for haircuts, so I was glad to see parents getting haircuts. I remember one parent, he had to hold his little, I guess it would be like a toddler, and turn him for the barber. But he was getting ready for preschool, so that was pretty neat. So I'd like to thank Chief for engaging in that, because that's something we used to do in our earlier career, the mayor's backpack and what have you. So others have taken that on now, Mr. Mayor. I want to encourage you all, and I say this all the time, but I really, really mean it this time. The manager and I represented our city at the Florida League of Cities. And I know you don't really, really participate in the Volusia League of Cities, but that's where it begins, here at home, where the cities come together and we bring speakers in to talk to us about new laws and representatives, and folks come down and talk to us. But at the Florida League of Cities, which is when all the cities in the state of Florida come together, there's training there. That's where I do my ethics training. I know some of you do it online, but it's live there. They have workshops for us. We get to learn various things. They even have a training for us where we can get credits for just learning our role and how we can be better at the positions that we hold here. So I really want to encourage you to go out to the Florida League of Cities website and look at the classes that they have. There's certification steps for us to go through. And I'm going to go through one of those, go through that myself. It's called EMO. Don't ask me what that stands for. But it's really an opportunity for us to just be better at what we do. Okay, so please consider that. It was in Miami this year. It alternates between Orlando and Miami. The mayor is usually there with us for the Florida League of Mayors, but he was at the Jackie Robinson Park. That was a little bit more important on this end. And I had already committed to this, so I went to that. So please, please, you all, consider the Florida League of Cities as well as our Volusia League of Cities. Now, last night, I couldn't have planned it any better. Our residents for Highlands were so very pleased with what all we've done. Sandy, you should have come. I know you just come back in town, but you should have been there. I'm sure Ann told you. You know, we, this residency is 100 years old. It was the furthest west for us back in 1924. It was the end. And had you been there, you would have heard the history, how where Daytona State is and where Mainland High School is, that was supposed to be their golf course. That's how widespread this land was going to be, this development. How we had two arches and how one was taken down and one was moved over. They brought a railroad track in to move that arch that's on International Speedway to its location because they widened the street. So there was so much that was shared. We began with a static display. Oh, look at some of the stuff. We began with a static display of items that some of the residents have. Oh, that's my, Saute King was our chef. It was very good. I insisted that the caterer came from my zone. Saute King, you all, is on the corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard and Magnolia Avenue. Please support them. We got raving reviews last night. I know you don't eat that kind of stuff. Raving reviews on the food that we had last night. That's Miss Files from the museum, the Historical Museum. She shared some historical facts with us. These are some of the pictures and things they had from 1924 forward. That's our chef and his staff. His son is on the left or the right. That's Clarice. They had those T-shirts made to represent their 100. That's what their marker looks like, that we put a permanent marker out there. It was a 3-step process. The banner and the marker went up last month, and this month was the reception, Clarice and I. The reception had the static display. We had the munchies, and then there was a presentation in the auditorium. That's Faith. She's the vice president. And this is Gary. He's lived there 71 years of his life. He's never left. That's Heather and Jack. And they all just shared things. The audience was laughing. They were remembering. They talked about how they used to keep the street lights on, how everybody could just go from door to door. You know, the old neighborhood thing. It was just really, really nice to hear that. And our mayor was there. He presented them with a proclamation. And I told him, I said, when we take the time to write a proclamation, there's something to be said. And the mayor is a very busy person, and he made sure it was on his calendar, and he came. And it was just really, really, oh, there you are. It was just really, really a great night. And they were so pleased, and staff was so honored to do this. They were excited about putting this together. We had a video of the history of how they came to fruition and how things took place. And then we also, staff Joseph and Xavier, they went out. There are 8 original homes still on that site that people are living in. And we took pictures of those homes and we added it to the video. And they were so impressed to see their homes in the slideshow. But it was really, really nice. And the last part for them, they have an annual picnics, and that's going to be private. But we wanted them to know that we value them as citizens. We honor them for having maintained that. I call it like a little quiet place in Daytona. And those homes are really, really nice. And it was just really, really nice. I wish you all could have joined us last night. And for those of you who did, thank you for coming out. Okay, Scuba Drive, talked about the Highlands. And I just want to give a shout out to Katie, Susan, Justin, Xavier, Joseph, David Waller for the banner and the marker, the manager for giving these staff members to me to plan this. We've been planning for a while, you all. And it really, really was a wonderful evening to celebrate. My last thing is, you know, we keep talking about affordable housing being a primary concern of ours, right? Where there's some low-hanging fruit that we can take advantage of. And it doesn't mean we have to wait for a developer to come, but what can we do right now? So, for example, something that I've done, and I've mentioned this before, but for those of you who have never heard it, and for those who need to hear it again, $30,000 of my ARPA funds went to the Habitat for Humanity. And we had people that were on the roofing list to get new roofs for over 2 years. But we allocated some of that money we took went to the city for roofs. So we've done more roofs in the last 2 years than we've done in the last 4 or 5. So I said, would you identify those in my zone who've gotten a new roof from us? And with this $30,000, would you go and paint their homes? Well, they came back and said, well, Commissioner Reed, there's so much more that needs to be done. They've got broken windows, they've got rotting wood. Well, I said, you know, a new roof and not taking care of the rest of the house is like getting a new dress and having a raggedy pair of shoes. Have you heard a lady walking around and you can hear that nail in her shoe? Girl, take that shoe to the shop. Okay? That's when you walk that little thing off the bottom. So I wanted their homes to be nice. If we're going to invest, then let's invest. So I say that to say that was an investment for me on folks who already own affordable homes. But what more can we do? So Commissioner May and myself, and I see tonight that Commissioner Paris, have contributed to Homes Bring Hope. And I had lunch yesterday with Farouk Husseini, and she wanted to share with me what she'd done with our money. I don't think she's had a chance to meet with you yet. But she said, you gave me money, Paula, and I want you to know how I've spent it. So when they first got the money, they helped 48 homes that were in disarray because of the storm. They couldn't even do homes yet. They were helping people whose homes were damaged because of the storm. They've got 26 homes in the pipeline of folks who are about to be blessed, and they've got several homes that they've already completed. And I just want to encourage those of you who still have some significant funds, if you would consider assisting them to continue on with this program. I know the mayor has given towards their educational program and supported that, and I thank you for that because Mainland is my school in Palm Terrace. But if you all have some significant funds, what can we do right now? Let's stop waiting on somebody else to do something for us. What can we do and say we've already started to proceed with affordable housing, with this low-hanging fruit? So won't you please consider Homes Bring Hope and let us help them? I know in between our 2 zones, I know on one street in my zone, they've already built 4 houses. And that was on Caroline. And then there's the home that the young woman and her children on the other side of Allen Chapel, I don't know the name of that street, that we all went to. And the mayor and I have, and some others, have walked the streets. And what I really like about them is the streets that they build homes on, they get teams of businesses that go down those streets and they help with the other homes there, because she doesn't want to put a new home on a street and the rest of the homes look like who did it and left it like that. So those teams get together and they fix fences, they have put in landscaping, they've assisted those homeowners in just how their homes look. And we've been judges on what the teams have done to beautify the other homes that are on the same street as the homes that they build. So if you would, just please consider giving something to Homes Bring Hope, and let's move forward with this initiative on our own in affordable homes. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Harris.
I don't have anything today. Thank you, Mayor.
I really don't have anything because I'm going to be leaving here. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to be leaving because, well, I did go to Turretee, as was mentioned, and I rode right by the new Turretee and drove to the old Turretee. So I'm driving, I drove right past, drove down, I pulled up and I said, ha ha. So that felt good though, because it's good to see our schools. We essentially have all new schools in Daytona Beach.
That's right.
The only one that's not new is Long Street. Long Street is the only one that's not new. But every other school, including West Side, which has had a completely new remake, essentially. All of the other schools are new. And it's beautiful to see our children being educated in such lovely facilities. And to be a commission that just supports schools and housing and the things that we value up here, we're supporting them. Veterans. The Jack was a great evening, but I do want to commend Commissioner Reed, because last night was one of the nicest events that I've had the pleasure of attending as a commissioner. I really, really enjoyed the camaraderie, the education, the history, and the friendship that's forged through neighborliness and neighborhoods. And again, that's what ARPA funds were about, helping neighborhoods to rebound from COVID, to get that feeling of old vitality that we had in the past. So I can't overstate what a good time I had, and the Highlands is one of my favorite neighborhoods because of the way that it's set apart. You just kind of run up on it, and there you are, and it's just a different place from a different time. But it was a great evening, and the evening was well done in terms of the questioning and the way that it was done, the location. We just have a great city. We have so many things, so many spaces in this city that we have to do things in. So many spaces. We were at the museum for this particular event. Our parks are proven to be magnificent. What you all are able to do at the Daisy now, fantastic. So I'm not going to just bore you with all of that. I am going to do what I don't like to do, which is not stay and listen to the residents, but I will go back and listen to you all later. My wife is having a milestone birthday, and I'm going to celebrate the one that I love. So, you need me for 2 seconds?
I do, Mayor.
I'll
I'm
stay
sorry.
with,
Thank
I'll
you.
go from him to you, and then I'll stay for Ben. It's no offense, but,
My apologies. I do have one other item. This would have gone on as an agenda add-on, but we didn't get it signed by the other party until around 2 or 3 or 4 this afternoon. Xavier and Joey, can you throw up the document on the screen?
It's right there. Ben, there's some behind.
Right. I just wanted to have this so everybody can see it. So the plaintiff's attorney in the panhandling case had sent a cease and desist letter to our litigation attorney because of concerns she had over our downtown security guard contract. There was a TV news report that she thought suggested that the intent of that contract was to target panhandlers. And frankly, our outside counsel suggested that we suspend the contract because of that concern, because it's very important that we don't defy a court order or appear to be defying a court order if we're going to go to an appellate court. But what we discussed was doing an amendment instead, and we think this will serve everybody. It's a very plain amendment. It doesn't really change things substantively. The first thing you see is an amendment to Section 1B of the contract, which is part of the intent section. The underlying language is new. The existing language says we're attempting to address concerns of the downtown businesses relating to littering, trespass, loitering, and other nuisance activities. We added, consistent with basically the law, including the court's decision in this case, which enjoins us from enforcing the panhandling ordinance. Section 2, under scope of services, very similarly, has a general statement about the services that the security firm will provide, and the underlying text says in performing these services, They will not enforce, report to our police department or other city personnel in response to reported or observed or alleged violations of Section 66.1, which is the panhandling ordinance. And they won't detain or engage with people on the basis that they believe, somebody is suspected of violating the panhandling ordinance. In short, they're not going to take actions that would put us in violation of our injunction order. This is in substantially final form. I would like to get approval of this by the commission. You'll need to take public comment because you're making a decision. It's very critical that we get this approved as soon as possible as a show of good faith for both the court and the plaintiff's counsel, and as recommended by our own litigation counsel.
All right, we'll entertain a motion.
So
Take a motion from Commissioner Strick and a second from Commissioner Reed. We'll entertain public comment at this time. All right, no public comment, and all those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. I'll turn this chair over to Commissioner Parrish. Make it a great night, Daytona Beach.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioners. Yeah.
No, come on down.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 13, which is our public comment forum. Our first speaker is Karen Delisle, and on deck is John Nicholson. You don't want to speak again? Okay. Our next speaker is John Nicholson, and on deck is Frederick Brown.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. First one is the question, where are we on the ACLU lawsuit on the zones? We are having an election in about 2 months. We are about, I believe, 15,000 people, residents who are voting age, will not be able to cast their vote appropriately. So 15,000 is a great number. The county did not want to be 1% over on any one of their zones. I think we are at 90%, and one of our zone is over it. Secondly, beachside appearance. When we finish ISB, we will go to A1A. I'm asking you to take a look at what it looks like in Ormond. If you go into Ormond, that lighting section with all those signs, those yellow signs, I think there are 85 yellow signs within 2 blocks. That's what they want to do in front of the Hilton. It is not, because they will take all of our trees out of the medians. We will have no trees in the medians in Daytona Beach. Third, I want you to make aware that the CRA funds will end in 12 years. So I'm asking that we get on the stick and do some RFPs and use that funding system to get things moving. Bethune Point Playground, I think we're at the 5th playground that we've added to Bethune Point in the last 20 years or 10 years. Every couple of years, they put it in for a year, they take it out, they put it in for a year. Seabreeze Park, they've had 3 of them. They put them in, take them out, put them in. So either we are not doing well on our purchasing, or for some reason, we lose them. The boat club on the marina, I have not seen any activity for the last 2 years at the boat club. If the boat club is not being used, I'm asking that we look at their lease and RFP it. It's a beautiful building. It's right on the water. It's something that we could definitely use. Trunk or treat, I'm asking that if we do trunk or treat at City Island again, that it be cleaned up afterwards. The haystacks that were used in one of the exhibits is still there. It's been there 10 months. So whatever they put on for trunk or treat, that they remove it when it ends. The $11 million for the building, we have to get rid of the $11 million or we lose it. I don't know where we're at that. I understand that somebody's objecting to it, but we have to save that money. We don't get $11 million off, and and to throw it away is not a wise decision. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Frederick Brown, and on deck is Roberto Di Nicola.
Around 1508 Crescent Ridge, Daytona Beach. I live in a neighborhood that was also built in 1924. It's a National Historic neighborhood. We used to have signs. One of them is falling apart, and the other one, the city took the remnants down and it has not been replaced. It would be nice that we got a little recognition over in Zone 1 as well. I'm glad to see that Highlands had a good celebration. It would, again, be nice to see the rest of the city be able to celebrate their neighborhoods as well. We have to keep cognizant of what's going on with flooding. We've been lucky so far. The best is yet to come in terms of hurricane season. I'm praying that we don't have any disasters. I am glad to see that the city at least is keeping Butts Pond pumped down, but we need to start taking more aggressive action on this. Again, the Army Corps of Engineers is just the beginning. We have so many areas of the city that are completely unattended, and that would include our areas right here by City Hall that were not included in the study. We need to be more proactive. Clean energy, what a great idea. Again, I pointed out, is the city actually going to support that? The CPACE program's been bouncing around for the past decade, and it would be nice, and I've mentioned this several times, that the city of Daytona Beach start setting the example by starting some of their own energy projects here. Beach access. We have three areas, or two areas in particular that I want to address, and again, I brought this up before. At the band shell, the steps were wiped out, and now we still have temporary fencing. This is our third summer of no access to the beach from the band shell area, and we still have temporary fencing. And I will point this out, it's not even anchored down well. We could leave ourselves open to a lawsuit if somebody falls and gets hurt there.
I agree.
When can we get those rebuilt? I don't see a plan. We as the citizens don't hear anything about it. And, again, this is our third summer with no access. The access there by the Fifth Avenue area, by the hotel there, again, I brought this up before. It's a sham. The businesses on either side, there's a tattoo parlor on one side and another business on the other side that think that the beach access is their personal private parking. I realize the county is responsible for their end of it, but the city of Daytona Beach is responsible for our side of it. It needs to be properly marked and labeled. Talking about money that we could lose, and I'm going to preface this for my next speaker. Tennis courts need to be rebuilt at City Island. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Roberto Di Nicola, and on deck is Jordan Austin.
As he approaches the podium, I'd like to say, for those of you, if you register and get the manager's newsletter, the mayor has an excellent message in the newsletter in regards to flooding and making sure where you are in the floodplain. There's a number you can call. He's also telling you about a 25% discount on flood insurance. So please take advantage of the information that we share with you.
Good evening, Roberto Di Nicola, 2020 South Peninsula. We have City Island Volleyball Club has 468 members, and they play on one volleyball court. It'd be great to have 2 additional courts, access to bathrooms while people play. And so this would help keep this wonderful sport club alive. By not doing so, we're pushing to basically punish people that are trying to practice sports, improve the sense of community, camaraderie, and stay out of trouble. Sports are good for cities. The same applies to tennis. For almost 100 years, we've had 6 tennis courts on City Island. Courts used to be red clay. There used to be an office, restrooms, locker rooms, hitting wall, and one by one these things disappeared long before the hurricanes. Not rebuilding the tennis courts would punish a community of hundreds of tennis players that who had used City Island and would use it again. 7% of the population plays tennis. 7% of the population. A membership fee for City Island Tennis or Schnebley's or Basin Street, anywhere the tennis courts can be, would be very acceptable by tennis players. Now, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. Tennis, especially ATP and WTA tournaments, can bring a lot of money to the city. Unfortunately, the Florida Tennis Center only has one legal tournament tennis court. The 23 other courts at the Florida Tennis Center qualify as practice courts, not as tournament courts. So the reason why we haven't had high-level tournaments is in part because of that reason. Now, USTA and GVTL make exceptions, but there is a standard of size that is not met at Florida Tennis Center. But, however, if new courts can be built, there would be, criteria can be met, and a lot of the money that comes to cities come from broadcasting right fees. And WTA and ATP tournaments come with broadcasting fees. We're talking about millions of dollars per event, and these are left on the table by not having any tournaments. We need more parks. There is an excellent possibility, 2010 South Peninsula Drive in Daytona Beach. The sewer main is just on the south end of the property.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker.
One moment. I'd like to ask the city manager if we have like an update on the master plan for Parks and Recreation.
The staff is reviewing the master plan and will be making a presentation to you all in the very near future after talking with it. There's still a survey online. We've also communicated that out to many of the individuals, that master plan is a holistic approach and not just us selecting certain things. So once the plan is completed with our consultants and staff reviews, it will be brought as a presentation to the commission.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jordan Austin. On deck is Jacob Dunlap.
Hello, everyone. Jordan Austin, 237 Bob White Court. I was here a couple weeks ago. I'm the co-organizer of the Daytona Beach Volleyball Group. Last time I was here, we had 255 members. As of currently, we have 455 members. Currently, we have 472. In 2 weeks, we've gained 17 members, which at this rate, I'm ecstatic about. I love that so many new people come out every week. The way it's growing, one court just simply doesn't cut it. We have 32 people out there right now playing volleyball. I'll be back out there as soon as I'm done here today. It's a really great thing. We have ages from high school all the way up to people in their mid to late 70s who come out and really enjoy playing. I organize 3 days a week. And it's even with 3 days a week, it's simply not enough. I can't spread people out enough. With 8 people on the court at a time, having 30 to 40 people there every day it's great. The camaraderie is great. The conversation is great. Meeting people is great. It's hard to advance in that sport when you have to wait so long between playing. And I think there's a lot of space that could be utilized at City Island or even anywhere in the general area would absolutely be fantastic. And I know Robbie has been working really hard the last few years to get tennis back there as well. I think there's a lot of good space we could use to continue getting recreation back to City Island as far as more volleyball courts and tennis courts as well. I'm trying to think of what else. And then also I mentioned it last month, facilities, things like bathrooms, showers. I'm out there 5 to 6 hours at a time. That entire time there is no public restroom to be used without driving. So any way that that could be sorted out in the future would be fantastic as well. Kind of bring more of a lively environment back to City Island, I think would be fantastic. So thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, where did you say you live?
237 Bob White Court.
Yeah, you live in Pelican Bay?
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh.
Have you been to our sports center?
I haven't, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
you need to go check it out.
Sure, yep. I work in Holly Hill, and I live at my boss's house in Holly Hill, just because it's so close to work. But my residence is 237. That's where my mom lives. So, but I will check it out sometime
Yeah,
for sure.
we have clay tennis courts, we have everything.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there volleyball courts
We have
also?
A lot of different things, yeah. And Nick is willing to do whatever. If you're bringing that kind of crowd, Nick will help.
Sure. I will also say I will always say to the commissioners that there is a benefit that is being provided to the volleyball players because technically our parks are closed at the hours which they're playing, but we have allowed for the lights to stay on into the properties and not the restroom facilities because technically the park is actually closed at a certain time. And so there is a benefit. If we were to leave the restrooms open this late in the evenings, there will be staff members that would have to work and also will be open for the general public. So that is one of the reasons right now. But technically, staff is allowing for the parks to stay open because I think they're supposed to close at 7 p.m. So we keep the lights on to allow for the volleyball program to actually continue to operate until we can have a facility based off the master plan that you all are working on now.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacob Dunlop, and on deck is Doyle Lewis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Dunlop, 43429 Bear Lake Boulevard. I drive out here from DeLand, actually, to play volleyball. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm here to advocate for additional recreational courts at City Island Park. I'd like to start by reading you a post I made to our volleyball club page, and I quote, I have to admit I first joined this group a few months ago, not thinking too much of it. It was just something to do a few times a week to keep me busy. I was pleasantly surprised at how welcoming everyone was when I showed up as a newbie. I was going through some pretty rough times, and this group reminded me that there are still good people out there. I can't thank everyone enough for their kindness and respect. I look forward to volleyball every week now, and I consider many of you my friends at this point, end quote. You see, this group wouldn't be possible if there was no court for us to go to in the first place. It's had such a positive impact on my life, as well as so many others. By utilizing the existing space at City Island Park for additional recreational courts, it would allow for more players to foster new friendships, connections, and create a healthy community where people of all ages, ethnicities, and walks of life can come together, play some volleyball, and maybe, just maybe, help someone else get through their rough times as well. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I also just wanted to apologize for all the sand. I just came from volleyball, so sorry for the mess. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to the city manager for leaving that open and letting them play at night while we're going through the process.
Our next speaker is Doyle Lewis, and on deck is Austin Williams.
Welcome back.
It's on.
He's been gone from
I didn't pay for this. But my family did. My name is Doyle Lewis. I live where I want to. Tonight is in Daytona Beach. I came here to talk about one thing, and then the mayor left, and he runs that pretty well with the board. So I'm gonna do it backwards, because I do a lot of walking, miles of walking up A1A and down A1A. Most people don't know it's me because I changed my shirt. I changed my sandals. I changed my boots. So when somebody tells me a tree is worth more than a person's life to walk across A1A to go to the beach, I don't believe that. Ormond Beach did a great job. They've been studying walkers up there for years. They only have like 3 or 4 miles in Ormond Beach city limits, and they changed the world when they put those flashing lights in there to slow down the people who's doing 90 miles an hour
down A1A when they shouldn't be. Most of them don't pay attention because these cars are supposed to drive themselves. That doesn't happen. Another thing, I'm an architectural engineer builder, and all I do is walk these sidewalks. When you talk about new houses and you talk about old houses, you're talking my language. When a person with my experience with a house says it needs bulldozers, you should listen. There's a lot of houses that need that. There's only one way to make a rose bush that's 100 years old brand new, and I can prove it. My grandmother had a pink rose bush. The house was sold for $500 and went down the road 10 miles. We did everything we could to save that rose bush. It still died. I gave up. Then I mowed it down. Guess what happened? That sucker came back bigger than ever, brand new, because I mowed it down. And this is what's happening in Daytona Beach. When an expert builder like myself stands in front of you with the years I've got behind it, and they say the house needs to go because it's cheaper not to build it over, then you do it. Now, we'll go to electric bicycle parking, motorcycle parking, regular bicycle parking. There is almost none here. Every sign that it says at the library, you cannot park. You can't lock it down nowhere. We don't have bicycle parking, we don't have electric bicycle parking, and there is no motorcycle parking at our libraries. Now, here I'm gonna do the first thing. First step shelter, I support full blast.
Thank you, Doyle.
sir.
And I'm gonna stay homeless until you act like it and respect me.
Our final speaker tonight is Austin Williams.
Hi. Thank you for your time. I was out playing some tennis and basketball, and okay, I'm just here to play second fiddle for Roberto. Tennis is a great sport. I think it helps the youth have a passion in a sport. Hopefully, that's not smoking vapes and weed and drinking and whatever else kids do for fun that's not healthy. Clay courts are really important. Hard courts is almost like building blacktop for basketball. If you really wanted to help your community, you might build like a wooden basketball court. And hard courts are kind of dangerous. It's almost like if you're boxing, you get hit with a bare fist. That's what happens to your feet on a hard court. And building clay is like being more humane to the human body. And additionally, there's a lot of water in clay courts that protects us from the heat. So it can be very dangerous to have heat strokes during the long summer playing on hard court. A lot of tournaments, and like tournaments I used to play, they would have heat stroke rules. The players would have to take longer breaks, or sometimes they would just postpone play during the middle of summer. So Florida, we're gonna have, hard courts are just dangerous. And Daytona has a low amount of tennis courts in general. So I think clay would be the best thing if you can find, I know it's very hard to find property and money for it, but if you are able to, I think clay would be the best thing for the community. And then finally, clay, if you look at like any country club, which to me just represents an organization that has resources to build what's best, you will be hard pressed to find any country club that has hard courts and not clay courts. They almost all have either both or just clay courts. So I don't want to keep too much of your time. But that being said, the last thing I'll say is because clay courts are a superior surface and they do cost money, naturally there's a barrier to lower income households. They can't afford to play on clay court, and so they can't afford to progress in tennis as much as people who have more money. Tennis is kind of a money sport, but if we could use public funding to help the lower income families play on a proper surface, we might see more participation from the entire community, and I would love that. We have a good community at Derbyshire Park with a lot of people out there pretty regularly playing, but I think their future in tennis is somewhat limited because of the limited resources of Derbyshire Park, the lack of coaching and the lack of courts. So I think having a good court would be the proper foundation for attracting great players, great coaches, and finally, money from tourism. I think people from out of town would love to come just to play, say, hey, maybe I'll stay at the Holiday Inn and I'll go to the beach and I'll play tennis. One of my lifelong friends from South Carolina said, these courts in Daytona Beach Shores, these are the nicest public courts I've ever played on. So hopefully that could be a thing for Daytona Beach. People come from out of town, spend money on tourism, and play
Thank you,
tennis.
sir.
Thank you so much for your time.
What did you say your address was?
I live in my car.
Okay. For the record, I just want to say that we have great tennis coaches at Derbyshire, and the children get free tennis lessons.
Yes.
So all children can get free tennis lessons.
Thank you,
and
sir. You
we've
can go
had
ahead
the
and sit
same tennis coach, Miss Mary from Mainland High School. Her and her husband run a dynamic free tennis program every year.
Thank
then
you,
I did have-
Commissioner Henry.
Well, I'm sorry. I did have one additional speaker sign up late, Mr. Steve Miller.
And as Mr. Miller approaches, I don't know, you all can continue to come and talk to us, and we're going to listen. But I don't know if you heard what the manager said after the vice mayor asked. We are in the process of developing a Parks and Recs, what are we calling it? Master plan that's going to address all of our parks and recs, which means everything you're asking for will also be included. But until that is concluded, it's going to be what it is, because we want to take a proactive approach in updating our parks and recs. So you're going to be thought of, you're going to be heard, and before we even vote on that, we will bring it to the public what we're trying to do, and if we need to make some changes, then we would as well. But don't think we're not listening to you. We're in the process of developing that now. Okay?
And we actually have a survey online that you all can fill out that says. Sorry, we actually have a survey online that you can fill out if you haven't. Some of you probably have filled it out, and it just tells you, asks you for all of the information that you want, and so that is a part of the process, as Commissioner Reed has stated.
Thank you. My name is Steve Miller, 383 Walnut Street, beautiful Daytona Beach, Florida. First thing I want to do is thank the city manager for coming to visit Midtown Neighborhood Watch. We had a great meeting, and we appreciate any of you guys who decide to come out. Number two, the 386 project, I do think that we need to have a city presentation. A lot of citizens are complaining that they are being ignored, and they don't feel that they're getting their money's worth. In fact, one of my friends, Selena Stevens, in fact, they found a car buried on her property, so that stopped the progress on her property, so that would be great. Also, Mr. City Manager, the Lions Club is presenting Nancy Logan an award for building the diabetes wing at the hospital at Halifax, and they would love for you to make that presentation on October 8th at 1 o'clock. Roman, I'm sorry. But it's a beautiful wing. And by the way, I also made it to the Highlands Community 100-year anniversary. The food was fantastic. It was a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to the picnic. And by the way, I don't know whether or not everybody know that I'm running for County Council District 2. Thank you, Steve Miller.
And that was my final speaker.
Thank you for coming out, everyone, Daytona Beach. Have a good night.